So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to our session when the sun is shining and it's the end of the day and people are looking forward to the dinner tonight. We're delighted to be here this afternoon. This morning's session, we did not have a spare seat in the room that we were in, which was slightly bigger than this. So definitely thank you for staying with us for the rest of the afternoon. So in terms of our agenda for this session, we'll start off with some introductions, and then we'll spend about 10 minutes setting the scene in connection with skills and everything to do with skills. And then we'll have about 20 minutes to do a panel discussion and 10 minutes for Q&A. If you'd like us to, and maybe we should take a vote here in the room, because I genuinely think, that there's been a bit of a delay here. Is there a consensus in the room in terms of if you would like us to shorten what we're doing? There's some nodding over here. If we can shorten that as much as we can from the session we ran this morning. Yeah, we'll try and do that then.
Yeah, the keynote won't start but it will mean you can grab some air and have a walk before the keynote. Yeah.
Okay. Great. We'll do what we can on that for you, depending on how many questions you have. Because we sincerely hope you do have some questions. At least one would be great. So by way of introductions, I'm going to hand over to Celine first to start the introductions.
Yeah, hi everyone. Really lovely to see you and meet you. My name is Celine Floyd. I'm the Chief Skills Officer at Cappfinity. I'm an occupational psychologist by background, have been in consultancy for a couple of decades, as I say, working primarily with corporates, actually, and with typically large organisations globally, working on some of our most complex projects, helping organisations become skills-based and achieve whole-scale transformation, typically. Lovely to be here. Abby, do you want to go next?
No. Oh, yeah, I'll go next, Celine. Yeah, that's great. So I'm Abby Parker. I'm an account director at Cappfinity. And because I have a strength in competitiveness, I feel like so happy about saying this, but I have been in the world of work for double the amount of time that Celine has. So, but we're friends, okay? So
I know she's competitive, so it's fine.
In terms of what I do, I predominantly, for the last couple of years, it's my 9th year at Cappfinity. And for the last couple of years, I've worked almost exclusively in the education sector. As Celine said, we do work with a number of corporate clients as well. And I'll hand over to Anastasia.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Anastasia. I'm the MBA director at Manchester Metropolitan Business School, and I'm a reader and associate professor in HRM, and this is as short as it will ever get.
Hello everyone, I'm Emma Holt. I too am a reader and I'm the programme leader for the MBA. Just to mention, I joined the university in 2019 after spending almost 25 years practising as a solicitor. I'm now a non-practising solicitor, but I'm also the president of Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce. Great to be here.
Thanks, Emma. So by way of introduction for Cappfinity, here's Celine.
I'm going to literally do 30 seconds. So for those of you that aren't familiar with who we are 200 people strong now. We were founded in 2005, headquartered in the UK, but with offices in the States and Australia, supporting organisations across sectors, about 50% of the FTSE 100, across the entire people agenda. You can see some stats there which show the scale and the breadth of the work that we do. Next slide, Abby, thank you. And in terms of the offering, we do specialise in the defining of, the measuring of, and the developing of skills, and we will share a bit more about our methodology and our position on skills as we go through the presentation. From an organisational perspective, we help companies across the people agenda, so from pre-skilling to recruitment, onboarding, developing, mobilising talent. And as we say, that has been the predominant arm of our work. What we've seen in the last couple of years, especially spearheaded by the wonderful Abby, is extraordinary growth in this sector, actually, with higher education, and actually an exponential demand for our insights and our expertise into what organisations are looking for from a skills-based perspective, and then embedding that into institutions to support people ready for the world of work. So yeah, as I say, delighted to be here and to be learning and to be sharing some of our expertise and insights with you. Back over to Abby. I did that last time. Back over to Emma. Sorry, go on, Emma.
Just a few facts about the business school at Manchester Metropolitan University. I won't read through all this slide, but just to highlight a couple of points. You have our people figures there, including the background of our students. So 50% are first generation, so first in family to go to university. 51% from BAME backgrounds, something which we're going to talk about a little bit later in the panel discussion. Also to highlight our work in sustainability that you can see there, and also we are a triple accredited business school.
So before we share 2025's most in-demand skills, I'd like to take you a little bit back in time to 1965. Some of you may have been born then, some of you may not have been born then. But at that time, there were 7.5 million graduates. Today, that figure is 45 million. So we're seeing an exponential growth in 60 years of the number of graduates in the marketplace, whilst the global population has only increased 148%. So what does that mean for employers and the kinds of organisations that Cappfinity work with? Well, it means that they're relying far less on what university a candidate may have attended, what degree classification they may have, and they're thinking much more about different ways of measuring potential and measuring whether that individual will be a good match for that particular organisation. They're looking at what skills they have to offer, and that is exactly what we measure in the recruitment processes from a Cappfinity perspective for the clients that we work with. This slide here, for those of you who are in the keynote, will have seen this slide previously. There are multiple frameworks, there are multiple taxonomies out there. This is just one of them, the World Economic Forum. The top quadrant there are seen as to be the core skills of 2030. But let's be fair, none of us can predict the future, even the World Economic Forum. And these may change over time, and that presents a bit of a problem when we're thinking about putting curriculum together, when we're thinking about what do we include in the curriculum, what do we say students will be required, because many of them will not be entering the world of work in the undergraduate space for 3 or 4 years anyway. So that presents an issue. Some of you will have read the article in the Ambition magazine that talked about soft skills, and people call them attributes, values, strengths, skills. It's a complex world out there, and there's a lot for us to be thinking about in terms of students. There's one stat on here that I think really stands out to me, and that is that even though AI is everywhere, all of your students, all of us, are using generative AI probably. I don't know if there's anybody who wants to put their hand up and say they're not using generative AI in any way. Is anybody in that category? No? Okay. Everybody's using that. Last month, there was a study completed by 1220, and this is quite a large study. Only, as you can see there, 8% of resumes are showing AI skills. We need to be helping students so that they know what the currency is in terms of recruitment. From a Cappfinity perspective, what we've done is we've taken those frameworks and looked at everything out there, and to simplify things, because simplification is normally a good thing when we're thinking about change, we've looked at the taxonomy of 3 in our perspective, and what we've seen from our clients is a real movement from those skills that are trainable, that today's employers say we can train on the technical skills. We can give them what they need to use. I did computer science, we did C+ programming in those days. I don't even know if that still exists anymore, probably not, in terms of, most people doing programming. That's all done for you. And that, those things change very quickly. So those things that can be learned for a specific task, being technical, cognitive capability, we take that as a given. If you've got an employer that's looking for a graduate or an MBA student, etc., we take it as a given that the cognitive capability is there. That's all the great work you're already doing to develop that cognitive capability. The differentiator, the huge differentiator, and so many measures in the assessment process are all around behavioural skills. So when we talk about skills at Cappfinity, we're talking about behavioural skills. So here are the top 15 skills in demand as of today from a very large sample of organisations, some of the world's top graduate recruiters, Deloitte, HSBC, EY. We have 35 law firms that are now working with Cappfinity from an assessment perspective coming through to those firms. All of that data is in here. And you can see the top 3 skills. Top 3 skills, they always include collaboration and adaptable, but personal responsibility is new for this year in the top 3. So what that means is that our clients are saying we need people with personal responsibility. But they may say they need that. The next step is your students need to be able to understand that they may or may not have that skill. They need to be able to identify. They also need to be able to articulate that they have that skill, and they need to be able to evidence that they have that skill. And that's a 3-step process. It's very easy to sit there and say, well, we can do this and we know that this is included, but it's that next step. It's like, how do we help in the support of that skill? So very luckily, I'm going to move into the panel discussion now. 5 years ago, Manchester Metropolitan University were very much ahead of the curve. And they could see that we were working with those aspirational employers that they wanted their students to even apply for. Not just to secure work, but just to even raise the aspiration to that level. So they said, well, Cappfinity, can you come and help us, because you're working with those? And we started this conversation, and here we are 5 years later with lots of data behind us that we can share today. And Emma and Anastasia have very kindly offered to share that story in openness to help other people. And we look forward to that discussion, and there will be time for questions afterwards. So in terms of the questions, I'll grab a mic if I can, if that's okay, and we'll sit down. So, thank you. Can you hear me okay at the back? Is it on? Yeah. So, Celine, first question is for you. Based on what you're seeing happening around the world in terms of skills within enterprise, which skills do you think that the business educators in this room should be prioritising?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was shown quite clearly on the slide that you had up, and there are some in there that we have seen for many years. I think taking another step back and looking at a macro level, the skills-based movement really gained momentum about 24 months ago, about 2 years ago, and it has no sign of relenting. Most organisations now across sectors are wanting to become skills-based. It's a long journey, and many are even at the stage of working out where to start. But I think what is very clear is that there will be an expectation, there already is within the workplace, that newcomers coming in or leaders coming in are able to identify their skills, like you said, and articulate them. And technical skills are changing all of the time, right? This is what we're seeing. We do a lot of helping organisations define the skills they need. A few years ago, there would have been a lot of technical skills in there. That's now an absolute slither, and the majority is behavioural. And I think with the rise of AI, I think what I would add in terms of the slide that you had on, there is a real focus on what are these kind of sustainable human skills that are going to really set us up for success going forwards. And it is things like learning agility, growth orientation, anything to do with change, but also with the tech especially, and why I think personal responsibility is in there is because we know when you're using AI, good AI users are ones that are conscientious enough to review the output from AI, take ownership for what they're putting forward, and they've got that care and diligence to still want to make it their own. So that's why it's interesting to see that one come up. Yeah.
Thank you. And Emma, can you share why and how you first engaged with strengths and skills and developing those at Manchester Met?
I can. Can you move this one? Yes, thank you. Back in 2019, we had embedded employability into one degree. But we knew that wasn't enough. We were doing some extracurricular employability work, so through the careers service, but that in itself excluded some students who might not be able to attend, for example, for caring or work commitments or anything else that kept them away. So we knew we had to do more. And we knew we had to do more because we were aware of what employers are looking for. We were also aware to some extent of Cappfinity, and I'll come on to that in a bit more detail. But also our students, as I mentioned earlier, they come from backgrounds where they don't always believe in themselves. And that's something that we see quite often in our students. They don't believe that they're necessarily going to get the job that we know that they can get. So we knew there was work for us to do with our students to really, really develop those important softer skills, behavioural skills that employers are looking for. Yes, they could achieve the technical, but employers are telling us they're looking for something more than that. So we wanted to be able to work with our students to really develop those skills. On top of that, our cohorts are very big. I lead one module where we deliver this employability that's embedded in the degree. And in that cohort, there are 500 plus students every year. So we needed a scalable solution for this. And also, of course, we're very committed to making sure as a university that the graduate outcomes for the university are as good as they possibly can be. So our focus was on delivering a solution at scale, but that would really achieve solid results for our students so that they could go out confident into the world of work. So that's the why.
Yes. And the how.
The how.
How did you do it,
how,
Emma?
Yes. So the how. So this really began in 2021, the how, where we worked much more deeply with Cappfinity. Cappfinity have a tool called a strengths profile. And this is an amazing tool. I'd encourage you all to take it. I've taken it. Anastasia's taken it. It's a form of a psychometric test. You answer a series of questions, and as a result of taking those questions, your strengths are identified. And all of our students in the modules which are now embedded across the university take this strengths profile in their first year, their first term of their first year. And what the profile reveals is it reveals your realised strengths. So things that you do well, you know you do them well, you're energised by them and you use them a lot. So those are your realised strengths. Then it highlights your learned behaviours. So things that you do well, but you don't really get much joy out of doing them, but you just have to do them, basically. It highlights your weaknesses, which we completely ignore, because we're not here looking at a deficits model where we're trying to find, gaps in somebody's ability that we need to fill. We're looking for the positives in people's personality that we're going to develop. But the real gem in this skills strengths profile is the unrealised strengths. So things that you are good at, things that energise you, but you might not have realised were strengths. And everybody I know who's done this, that's been the most enlightening aspect of the strengths profile. So our students at level 4 all complete their strengths profile, which forms a framework for those who teach them employability skills and work with them on these embedded modules. It forms a framework for those conversations. So we call it personal and professional development at years 1, 2 and 3 through our accounting and finance and banking and finance degrees, and that's grown over the years across all the programmes in our university. And the people who teach this, who lead these modules, are the students' own personal tutors. So they too take the strengths profile, they have access to their student strengths profile, and they become accredited coaches to help support the students in the development of their strengths and the application of those as they go through their journey towards a job. And just to highlight, won't take too much time, but I run the second year. So if you look on the slide at year 2 here, we've just set out, just in headline terms, what we do in the second year. So in the first term of the second year, 10 weeks of activity, but we kick off with an employer panel. So employers come into the university and speak to our students on this module and talk to them about the importance of employability strengths. So we focus on those core strengths that Abby's been highlighting that are really important for employment. And the employers really validate this module because they're saying to the students, this language, these skills are what we are looking for. This is what is missing. And so we sort of set the scene from an employer perspective. We then have a couple of sessions, the My Strengths for Employability and Authentic Personal Brand, where we work with the students on their own strengths that they can apply to an employability setting. But I wanted just to mention what we call the pièce de résistance of this module, the assessment centre at the end of the module. Because in the UK, I'm not sure how common it is across all countries, but in the UK, a common assessment tool, recruitment tool is an assessment centre, where organisations recruiting will process people who are applying for jobs through a CV, through an application online perhaps, and filter them down to perhaps 100 candidates for a few jobs who come to an assessment centre, where they will be observed carrying out various tasks. A terrifying experience for somebody, just having left university or a young person. And we hold a mock assessment centre created with Cappfinity that tests employability strengths, half day, off-site, in a professional setting. There's no job dependent on it, so the students can throw themselves into it, have a really immersive experience that they can reflect on afterwards as part of their assessment. But the value of this is that we are showing them an experience which they will have in real life, but from which they can take a lot from, just experience it and then reflecting on it later. So that's what we've done in my module. We do flex this across the university in different programmes, but the fundamentals are the same. The strengths profile is taken, and we work with our students, with our personal tutors, to really set them up for employability success.
And how are you measuring that success, Emma? Because that's the important point.
Absolutely.
If we're looking for change.
Absolutely. So in terms of data, so some figures, 12,000 students have completed the strengths profile so far. 70 personal tutors are involved in the teaching of this programme. The statistic I'm most proud of is that 183% increase in students declaring that they are career ready when they go into the final year. So how they feel in terms of their career readiness has radically improved as a result of the steps that we have taken. And students, one of the most wonderful things I ever hear is when a student goes to a real assessment centre and they come back and say, that experience you gave us just really, really helped. I knew what I was going into. I could prepare properly. I mean, that's just fantastic, really fantastic to hear.
Thank you, Emma. And I know that many of you in the room probably running MBA programs and thinking, but what about MBA programs? So thank you for joining us, Anastasia. And I'm sure that people would be interested in hearing about why you decided to engage with this activity on the MBA program for personalised learning.
I gave a different answer this morning, but I was just thinking, I don't know if you agree with me, I haven't spotted a single keynote speaker that hasn't mentioned skills. So Abby used the word currency earlier, and I think that's a very interesting terminology. What our business school's purpose statement is to transform lives, businesses, and societies. And for us, skills is a vehicle to actually deliver that. So we don't just pay lip service to the transformation. We see it as something we can give our students at all levels to do that. The other thing that's quite interesting for us is that, I don't know if it's the same for everyone, but in the UK, higher education is receiving a lot of attention from media, from parents. There are these questions, is it worth it should I go and take out a loan to do this, or will it pay off? You know, what's the return on investment? Whether we agree with those terminologies or not, there are these debates in society. So for us, it's a way to say it adds value. This is the value we add. This is what you can, how you can translate what you've learned into something that you can take out in the labor market eventually. So on the MBA specifically, it was a key differentiator for us. It was a way to get a competitive advantage. What we do use on the MBA is a different profile that they use on the undergraduate and postgraduate programs. Cappfinity has what they call the leaders profile that's used extensively, I think, for recruitment for more senior positions for big firms. I think you have a number of corporate clients. So our MBAs have that opportunity to take that test, and we can help them translate what they've learned and the impact they've had immediately. I mean, I can't tell you all the theories I've learned as a student or even as an undergraduate or postgraduate student, but I can tell you how I managed a problem, not a technical problem, but resolving a problem I had with my classmates when we were working on a project. And that's a skill that I couldn't articulate before. But being able to articulate it and talk about it, it's definitely giving me more confidence. And like Emma said, a lot of our students that we speak to, they keep saying, I don't know if I can do an MBA. I don't know if I should be doing an MBA. Should I? I'm going to hide. But this gives them the confidence to be able to say, not only should I do an MBA, but I'm going to get promoted. We've had these stories. I can do manage merger acquisition or whatever. So it's been quite invaluable for us.
Fabulous. Thanks for sharing that, Anastasia, with so much enthusiasm. And we just wanted to do sort of one quick tip, if that's okay with everybody. So a quick tip in terms of if you were advising anybody here who's interested in helping their students with skills, embedding that in their curriculums in some shape or form, what's your top tip? And then we can move to Q&A.
Yeah, so mine just briefly will probably be leveraged from more of the corporate space. But I think it applies here from everything that I'm learning and hearing is this isn't something that you can do overnight. Like, it is a journey, and it is an enhanced and different way of thinking about oneself and also talking about oneself. And so acknowledging that I think is helpful, and language is actually, I find, a really good place to start, and actually giving people a language and a framework within to think about themselves and to talk about themselves. That in itself is so powerful, and that can be a really great way to start to turn the dial. So language.
Thank you. I think it's if this is going to work, it can't be a one-off thing. You can't pay lip service to it. It has to be strategically embedded. So what we do specifically, first of all, we had buy-in from the senior leadership team in the faculty. Then we have the director of education who has faculty level employability leads that report to them. And each department has employability leads that are responsible for this. And we use metrics, and we're accountable for that. Yesterday, we published the very first business school strategy. I say we, the dean did. And skills were part of the strategy. So we don't just talk about it. It has become part of who we are. People have been trained on, staff have been trained. People have dedicated, allocated time to be trained on this and work on that. And the other thing I can share as a tip, what we do on the MBA is that we, Vincenzo Vinzi mentioned earlier that we need a more holistic, skill-focused approach. We do exactly that on the MBA in the sense of our students take the test early on in the induction on day one. They then take the results and they work with a career coach. They discuss their strengths or unrealized strengths. They work with an MBA alumni mentor, someone who's done our MBA, is an alumni, and they can have that discussion about how they can improve their career with their personal tutors. It's it informs some of their assessments, and then they come and do the test again at the end of their program to see if there has been any movement, any change. So it's embedded in the faculty, it's embedded in the program across the 2 years, and it's not something, it's not a one-off thing that we just pay lip service to. I think that's very important to create an ecosystem for skills.
Just a couple of observations from me. So first of all, you need to be organised, and it was a large-scale commitment that we made here. So organisation is very important. Bringing the personal tutors along with you, so they fully understand, you know, why we're doing this, and supporting them through the journey. Working with the career service, so we work also very closely with our career service on some of the content of this. And also just, we've heard so much about how fast things are changing. You know, that's been mentioned as well, as much as skills almost, in terms of the pace of change, making sure that we iterate this, and as things change, we change to some of the language that Abby's been talking about, and we will be reflecting in our modules going forward. But the rewards in terms of social mobility for us have been particularly, you know, really very rewarding, and you know, a pleasure to see.
Well, thank you very much for sharing. And I can honestly say that this institution and these two individuals are genuinely doing groundbreaking and award-winning work. This year, we've managed to secure Harvard University to work with us, but it happened first in Manchester in terms of what we were doing. So, so thank you for being so generous and kind and sharing that. So. Anna, are you able to help us if there are any questions, or if people want to disappear? Yeah.
Boris, Maastricht University. Switch on here. My first question, I mean, what determines the desired skill set? So I mean, you started the presentation with, okay, these are the common the skills that are asked by the employees, by the employers. I would assume that the demanded skills are quite heterogeneous, so that there are differences between employers, what kind of skills they require. It might differ whether you work for a multi-corporate or for a startup company. So
Yeah. So at Cappfinity, as Abby showed, we've got the behavioural, cognitive and technical. On the behavioural, we've got a taxonomy of 80 behavioural skills that are research and data backed. What you find in practice when you go in and you do the work with organisations is, yes, there is variance across industry. Not just industry, where in the world you are, the size, where you are, like so many variables. But because we're always talking about humans, there is also an extraordinary amount of commonality in the skills, which includes some of the key things that Abby showed. And I think that's what we're finding more generally through the research, is that, you know, we see the 80 as being the common, sustainable set of skills, but they're getting narrower because of the volatility and the changeability that's out there. You find yourself just focusing on what are the real subset of skills that will enable people to navigate that volatility and complexity, and that's true across most organisations, right? So, yeah, great question. Hope that answers it, but could talk about that all day, so thank you.
Hi, my name is Anna from Porthe Business School. Do you have any kind of support to faculty to match the curriculums with the skills?
So, like I said, we have dedicated, we have this in the UK, those of us from the UK, we have this wonderful thing called workload model. So every hour of our day is allocated to a task. So we get time allocated to be trained on this. But what we've also done in our business school recently, we've revamped our entire portfolio of programs. And now every program is a requirement. Like I said, it's part of the strategy. So when the teams, the faculty teams, develop the new curriculum, they have to think of how are the skills embedded in the program. How is that translated to outcomes? So our graduate, when they are our students, when they graduate, they will have these skills. So it becomes the culture. It becomes part of what we do to the extent that we don't think about...
But the skills are defined by the school? Or to the skills that you want
No,
to
we don't have a
achieve?
specific... No. It's every program, because we have finance programs, we have HR
for
programs.
Instance, the MBA students,
Yeah.
At the end of the program, do you want them to have specific skills?
Yeah, so we have on the MBA specifically, so they are the wider digital leadership skills. But I think what we do on the MBAs, because it's individual and we have people from different backgrounds, they then work with their career coach to say, these are my strengths, and what can I do with my strengths? What's the movement in my career with my strengths? These are my unrealized strengths. What do I do? So it comes down to their level as well, and it informs their assessments, which are around their organization or themselves. So we don't dictate the skills, if you like, but it's about them figuring out their skills and what they need. If that makes sense.
Actually, my question follows on the previous one, but because it seems like you train, or you kind of train or learn them to be self-aware and to focus on their strengths. If I look at the list, there's collaboration and adaptability, personal responsibility. I have experience with students leaving the MBA that I think, I'm not sure about your collaborative skills, but still they leave the MBA with a degree. So in my case, there was always the tension between, we also focus on like reflection, self-awareness, focusing on strengths, be aware of your weaknesses. But in the end, I also want them actually to all be personally responsible and to be able to collaborate, whereas that is not always, we're not able to achieve that for every student. So I wonder how you deal with that kind of tension, sort of.
So I think what we've done early on, because this is a new MBA that we developed, we designed last year, we set our principles in terms of what we want our MBA students to what skills we want them to have, and like I said, and how we want them to behave afterwards. So the principles based on which we develop the modules, the content, and the extra curriculum offer was sustainability. So our program was mapped across the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which means every module, whatever you do, they will have to have something to do with sustainability and be aware of that and the implication. The critical thinking, all those things were given, but we also wanted, like I mentioned, the digital leadership, an emphasis on the impact. So we wanted to be the MBA for responsible leaders. So we wanted them to consider through their actions what would the positive impact they would have be. We're not very prescriptive, because we also, like I said, it's about the individual. But for us, it was the parameters that we wanted, that were important to us as the Manchester Metropolitan Business School and the Manchester Met MBA. And from them, it's about the individuals and working with, some are in finance, some are in legal, some are from startups. So it was their conversation to have and see what they could take from that.
Sorry, just one build on that. I think what you're pulling on there is a really important point, and it's something we've seen over our heritage within Cappfinity, is this tension, almost this kind of dichotomy between laying out the skills that somebody needs and then getting that person to embody them. And that's where behavioural skills are different from technical skills, because with technical skills you can aim for a proficiency level and you can learn that, and once you've learned it, it's learned. I went into psychology because humans are so complicated and I love how complex we are. And as much as we can all be taught and encouraged to develop a behavioural skill, Anastasia has different skill sets to me and different strengths, and so that's kind of where the magic happens, is laying out the skills that you encourage people to think about. And this is what organisations are doing. They have their leadership frameworks and their values frameworks, and they're setting out their stalls of these are the things we want you to think about, but within that parameter we want you to be you, and we want you to shine and be your best self. So I think that's kind of what you're embedding as well. Yeah, that helps.
Should we take one last question and then let people go?
Yeah.
If anybody wants to ask questions afterwards.
Yeah, we will stay here, yeah.
Yeah, I'm feeling pressure now to make this a good one.
Make this a good one. Come on. You can do it.
I'm interested in this aspect of AI being a key skill, both now and for the future. But I'm also conscious of the kind of higher education debate around academic integrity, particularly around assessments. So you know, some universities don't use it or will punish you. Our university, well, you can use it as long as you cite it, which I don't really understand.
Yeah.
But could we kind of flip it on its head and say, well, we expect you to use AI in an effective way for assessments, because that will help develop your skills. But the flip side, with your experience of employers, do you think employers would feel that the integrity of assessments was undermined, or do you think they would think that it's a positive step if we could do it in the right way? And I'm not sure what that right way is.
So I think probably all got a burning view on this. My just very, very quick personal view, I'm with you on turning it on its head completely, and I've been talking a lot about this recently. I think AI is here. As Abby said, everyone's using it, and I think, are we not better off actually focusing on the effective and positive use of AI and really embedding that into higher ed and then into recruitment and then into organisations? We've just finished a key piece of research into what are the skills that make someone better able to use AI than others. So we've got a model around that now. There seems to be an incredible appetite for that within organisations. Like, that is, the tide is turning on appropriate and effective use. And Anastasia, I know that's what you're doing, aren't you?
So what we do is on induction day, during the induction, they get training on AI with the critical perspective. I think how much energy it's consuming just to create a little video with a cat doing something. What we found this year is that they were so fascinated by it, they started using it non-stop in class to check facts, I was teaching them leadership, and they ran a question on ChatGPT or something. Who are the most effective leaders in history? And they came and told me, this person 56%, this person 65%. And I said, oh, they're all men, how fascinating. And that prompted the discussion. But what we also say is that you can use AI, but what we've done is create what we call authentic assessments. So we've changed our approach to the assessment. AI doesn't fit in the old assessment approach. So we've taken the stand of, we want you to have this skill, and the skill will change tomorrow because AI will change. I don't know, the technical skill is irrelevant, the prompting is irrelevant. But your approach to a new technology, adopting it, using it, being friendly, being critical, being responsible, is the actual skill. So we're putting all that to them, and we're then saying, in 3 years when there's a new technology, I don't know, hologram, whatever, you take this approach and you know what to do with it and how you're gonna embed that in your organization and what you need, from change management, the finance. The very first module we have on the Manchester Met MBA is a strategic management module, and they talk about AI and strategy. So we kickstart the conversation, and then, like I said, I'm sure ChatGPT will change tomorrow, but it's that approach that we want them to have. I don't. It's my amazing team that does it, so I can't take credit.